What is going on, everybody? Happy Friday to you. This is odds.com and this is the post weigh-in recap, the absolute best betting show for mixed martial arts on the planet today. We are crushing these post weigh-in reads, and boy, do we have a lot to go over today for UFC 254. Let's get right on into it because we've got a ton of information to go over this week. We start the night off with Yoel Alvarez taking on Alexander Yakovlev. Yoel Alvarez misses weight. He comes in at 159.5. He came up on the scale and he had a big old smile on his face and a big flex. It looks like he thought he made weight for 160. I think he might have thought he had a catch weight or something because he did not appear to understand that he missed weight. And he moved well. He didn't appear like he had sucked himself out too much or anything like that. This is one of those rare instances where a weight miss, I think, might actually be a strength. He did not look like he hurt himself cutting this weight, and he's giving up 40% of his purse because of it. Alexander Yakovlev makes 155.5, and he's an Ov, man. He's a Russian. He comes in looking hard, looking confident, as always. They sized up well. It was a respectful weigh-in. Yoel Alvarez is a little bit bigger, and man, is he cut up and muscular compared to the stringy Alexander Yakovlev. So my read on this fight, I really want to bet Yoel Alvarez. I'm just trying to figure out how I want to do it because I don't want to lay minus 180 on him. Like I said, that extra weight I feel like is going to benefit him in this case as opposed to hurting him. He wasn't shaking on the scale. He didn't look like he had been running right before he came in. This looked almost like one of those premeditated weight misses. And if he's got that extra muscle on him when he's fighting Yakovlev, who's a wrestler, he's probably going to do much, much better in those scrambles. At the same time, we do see guys that have these weight misses gas out, so Yakovlev might be able to grind this dude for 2 and 3 rounds and squeeze away with a decision here. I'm not sure what to do on this one. I'm probably just going to end up passing. My gut still says that Yoel Alvarez finds a way to use this to his advantage and sync up a submission, but that's kind of the script. You're not going to get any value betting Yoel Alvarez by submission because that's what the bookmakers think is going to happen also, and I don't trust him in a parlay. Liliya Shakirova taking on Miranda Maverick. Now, Liliya Shakirova came in very, very calm, did the one-arm pump flex thing, hit 126 on the scale. She looked just fine. Miranda Maverick hit 126 as well, and this girl is built. She's got some muscle on her. She looked confident, and when they faced off, Lyanna looks ready. This is one where I was actually really surprised at how much bigger Liliya Shakirova was than her opponent, Miranda Maverick. She stepped in on her, got in close. It was way more intense than I expected, and Miranda Maverick wouldn't shake her hand. She got off the stage in a hurry and basically gave her some attitude. Now, this one I've got a little bit of an interesting thing on. Somebody tweeted at me earlier in the week laughing that Miranda Maverick opened up at minus 400. And you know who liked that tweet? Miranda Maverick liked that tweet. She's paying attention. She's searching for herself out there on the internet. This is a girl who I think is starting to believe her own hype. This is a girl who is insanely confident in herself and in her abilities, but I've seen some sketchy things from her. Now, we know Liliya Shakirova's one path to victory is going to be the submission, but Miranda Maverick gives up takedowns. Miranda Maverick loses in scrambles, and she is primarily a ground fighter. So this thing is going to find its way to the floor, opening that door for Liliya Shakirova. Not to mention, Jojo is a Georgian fighter, and those of you who know me know at this point I'm blind betting Georgian fighters because they are hard people and they simply do not quit. They show up and they're always there to win. We cashed on a plus 250 dog last week. Even though it was a razor-thin, sketchy decision, we still got it done at a nice line. So what I've done on this one, I'm going to take a little shot on Liliya Shakirova. Her ground game really is her only path to victory, and we know that. So I took her by submission at 8-1 for a half unit. That half unit will benefit us 4 units if she comes through, and then it doesn't hurt us that bad if Miranda Maverick is the minus 400 that she should be. If she comes out and either stomps Shakirova out or if she grinds her out for a decision win, no harm, no foul. We don't have to worry about it. But I'm going to go ahead and roll just a little bit of the dice on Jojo to get that submission victory here and pull the upset. Next up, we've got Da-Un Jung and Sam Alvey. Smiling Sam comes in at 206, same as Da-Un Jung. Both guys make the 206 limit here. Da Jung looks mean. He looked really good. He was leaned out. We know he's a volume striker. Sam Alvey, he's a little undersized for the division. He made weight easily. We expected that. Smiling the whole way. But you know what I noticed? He had a couple little abs popping. Smiling Sam is a guy that comes in with a little flab around the middle. He's got that dad bod. He's got like 4 kids. But he came in and you could see the outline of some abs. He took this fight very seriously. I think he knows this is his last shot here in the UFC. Now, when they faced off, they stayed at distance. It was not like an intense stare down or anything like that. But let me tell you, Da Jung is massive. You talk about guys that are 205ers or, you know, guys that could potentially move up a weight class, something like that. Da Jung is really big, and that kind of concerns me. I do have a play on Sam Alvey. I got in early at plus 310, and I'm thinking there's a possibility for a hedge here. The way Da Jung fights, I mean, he's got fast hands, he hits hard, he's got 90% of his wins by knockout. If you want to hedge off of that, if you tailed me early and got the big price on Smiling Sam Alvey, you can maybe take Da Jung by knockout, and then if he wins the fight the way that he most likely should, it's no harm, no foul. You get out of there without losing your unit on Alvey. But then if Alvey wins, you've still got, you know, 2 units of profit on the other side, giving away that unit on Da Jung by knockout. At this point, I'm just going to let it ride. I've made my bed. I'm going to lie in it. I'm rooting for Sam Alvey, but based on what I saw in the weigh-ins, if you haven't pulled the trigger on Sam Alvey yet, I wouldn't at this point because he's fighting an uphill battle against this kid. Alex Cowboy Oliveira taking on Shavkat Rakhmonov. We've got Oliveira coming in at 173, and this is another really weird one. He seemed happy. He comes in 2 pounds overweight. He misses weight, and he does a big smile, a big flex. Looks like he was ready to order dessert up there. I mean, I don't understand these people who miss weight and then get all excited about it. Now, he did take this fight on 17 days short notice. He was supposed to be facing Elizeu Zaleski dos Santos, and then Shavkat Rakhmonov filled in for that fallout. Both these guys are essentially here on short notice. Shavkat came in at 171, looked great on the scales, moved well, no issues. This is going to be a hell of a fight. Cowboy's got to give up 20% of his purse to the UFC debutant, and Shavkat actually tried to one-up Khabib here on this one. He's got like this big furry beaver hat that he was wearing. It looked pretty awesome, but they had an intense stare down. This is one of those ones, they got in each other's faces. Shavkat's just a little bit bigger than Cowboy. So what I did on this one, that line has officially flipped. We got in on Shavkat earlier in the week. I got plus 130 on Shavkat in my pocket. I'm going to hedge off, folks. This is another one where Cowboy Oliveira did not look bad missing 2 pounds of weight. In fact, he seemed excited about it. So I don't know that it was necessarily planned, but I also don't think it's going to be a disadvantage for him. On top of that, the UFC experience that he's got, all the guys he's faced and stuff like that, getting even money on Alex Cowboy Oliveira, we essentially have a nice little hedge spot where if Shavkat wins, we profit. If Alex Oliveira wins, we lose nothing. So I'm going to go ahead and take that opportunity to hedge out on this one. It's a little close for comfort for me this week, and I really don't want to I don't want to be on the bad side of Alex Cowboy Oliveira 2.0, who is coming in with a little bit of extra gas in the tank, if you know what I mean. Next up, we've got Nathaniel Wood taking on Kenney. Both guys came in at 140. This is a catchweight bout because Kenney's making that quick turnaround. They get that extra 5 pounds. Now, Nathaniel Wood, he looked good. He looked lean, got an extra flex on the scale. He's ready to go. Kenney at 140, boy, is thick. Holy crap. The 5 pounds difference for Kenney is absolutely massive. He is filled out, and he is so much thicker than Nathaniel Wood. It kind of blows my mind. Kenney came in hot. When they did the face-offs, he stepped in. He stepped up on Nathaniel Wood. He is ready to go. And what I ended up doing on this one, I've been on the fence about this fight basically the entire week. I want to bet Kenney, but the public wants to bet Kenney. Everybody saw what Kenney did against Haile Alatang. Now he's fighting Nathaniel Wood, this young up-and-coming prospect, this monster. I don't want to lay 2-1 on Kenney, and I don't want to parlay a fighter taking on Nathaniel Wood, who's a prospect I'm very excited about. So what I settled on here is I'm going to just sprinkle Kenney by knockout. It's 7-1. I'm going to do about 0.2 units on that just for a little bit of a sweat, a little bit of a payout, because we have seen Nathaniel Wood get hurt before. We have seen him get knocked out before. John Dodson did it just a couple of fights ago. Kenney's striking has improved leaps and bounds. What he did to Haile Alatang, a lot of people wouldn't be able to handle. And with that extra 5 pounds, with that extra muscle on his body, the water weight on him, it looks to me like he's going to be able to have some more pop on his punches. I think that knockout, as opposed to the decision, is completely live in this fight because he's just going to have way more punching power, way more stinging power when he hits Nathaniel Wood. So, little baby shot there. I think Casey Kenney wins this fight, but again, I don't want to pay that price, and I definitely don't want to trust him in a parlay with Nathaniel Wood on the other side of the octagon. Next up, we've got the big boys, Stefan Struve taking on Tai Tuivasa. Both men tipped the scales at 265 pounds, the absolute heavyweight limit. Stefan Struve, business as usual. This guy's been here a million times. He's absolutely massive, 7 feet tall, did his thing, didn't look bad, didn't look great. Nothing to report. Tai Tuivasa, he threw up the hand signs as soon as he made weight. He's pumped up. He's ready to go. And the size difference when they faced off is apparent. Now, we knew that coming in. Stefan Struve is the tallest fighter in the UFC. What are you going to do? Tai was goofing around a little bit. He's always a fun guy. Good, respectful face-off. I've got Tai Tuivasa at plus 110 here in my pocket. That line also has officially flipped. Tai Tuivasa is now the favorite, minus 115, minus 120, somewhere in that ballpark. And I still like it. I think Tai Tuivasa by knockout is not a bad option. At plus 180, you can get that out there. I am not a believer in Stefan Struve. And with Tai Tuivasa basically going on back to the drawing board, essentially, taking an entire year off and training at AKA for this camp, getting a new look, getting new training partners, working with new people that are gonna, point out the holes in his game and strengthen those. I really like Tai Tuivasa in this spot, and I'm not touching that one. I'm gonna leave it alone. I'll ride that bet out. Magomed Ankalaev taking on Cutelaba. Both men came in at 205.5 pounds. Magomed looked stone cold. I mean, he always does. He's one of these Russians. He reminds me of Khabib, just absolute killer, straight-faced, ready to go. Physically, he looked fantastic. Cutelaba absolutely jacked. The time off after this fight being canceled multiple times, I think all he's done is lift weights because he is absolutely shredded for this one. Extra flexes, full of energy. Now, the report is that someone in Cutelaba's corner actually popped for COVID-19. So this fight is in jeopardy. They have a backup, a guy from Robert Whittaker's camp, apparently a training partner, that weighed in. He came in at like 203 or something like that. Know nothing about the guy, but he's the backup in case, for whatever reason, they can't make it work. My hopes is that this is a cornerman. Hopefully they can pull that cornerman, quarantine him, and then Ion will still be able to fight as long as he is the one that tested clear. We should be good to go. It was funny when they came up here. Cutelaba is so well known for his antics at the weigh-ins and the face-offs. Dana White was nervous. He was like doing this thing with his hands because he knew he was going to have to jump in between these two guys. But Ion did something really strange this time. He turned away. He wanted nothing to do with it. Usually he's trying to punk guys. Usually he's trying to get in people's faces. This was a calm, cool, and collected Ion Cutelaba, something we've never seen before. When they faced off, he stayed for about 0.2 seconds looking at Magomed Ankalaev and then turned away to face basically the cameras. I don't quite know what to make of that. Now, every single time this fight has come up, Ion Cutelaba ends up being a plus 275 underdog. And both times previously, I have decided at the very last second, at the 10th hour, to pull the trigger on Ion Cutelaba as a big underdog and go ahead and roll those dice. I'm a fan of this guy. I like what he does. He hits hard. The only problem is he's not great with the fight IQ. He gasses out from time to time. But I'm also not entirely sold on Magomed Ankalaev. Now, I know this guy is more technical, but he has also slipped up late in fights. He also has slowed down late in fights. So I think Ion Cutelaba is a little bit live here. I'm going to do my very best to pass on this fight, though, because I don't want to put my money on Ion when he makes those kinds of mistakes, but I'm telling you, what I see at the weigh-ins this time, this new version, this calm Ion Cutelaba, who seems to have a confidence about him, as opposed to trying to get in the head of his opponent, I like that a lot better against a guy like Magomed Ankalaev. He's made of steel. This guy's not going to flinch. You're not going to get him to question himself. And Ion basically saying, I'm not worried about you. That says something positive to me. This would be a dog or pass spot in my opinion, and I'm going to go ahead and pass for now, but as always, keep an eye on my Twitter, because I can't promise my trigger finger won't go off before the fight's due tomorrow. So, at DieHard MMA Pod on Twitter, give me a follow. Next up, we've got Lauren Murphy taking on UFC newcomer Liliya Shakirova. Both women come in at 126. Now, Lauren Murphy, absolutely shredded. I know she is a built woman. She's a strong woman. We've seen that for years, but this is next level. She is taking this thing super seriously. I think she wants that title shot. She's this close to getting it, and she came in ready for this fight. She was supposed to be fighting essentially a #1 contender spot against Cynthia Calvillo until she dropped out. and she seems very, very confident. Now, Liliya came in. She looked pretty good on the scales. I don't have too much experience with her, so nothing really to report there, good or bad. Murphy was huge when they faced off. Murphy much, much bigger, and Liliya tried to punk her. She tried to like juke at her and get her to flinch, and Murphy never blinked. Her eyes never wavered. She was locked in the entire time and then just gave her the finger as she, basically just showing her what's up. And Murphy had a little bit of the crazy eyes going on. She is so dialed in and ready to go for this fight. Same thing as what I did with Kenney. I took a little stab at Murphy inside the distance at plus 490, another 0.2 unit shot, just a little sprinkle on that because I wouldn't be surprised. Liliya coming in on short notice, using, footwork and movement, having to get around the cage, that kind of thing. Murphy's going to hit her and hit her hard. She is vicious, she is mean, and if her body is in any indication of what kind of shape that she is in and conditioning that she is in for this fight, again, she came in training for Cynthia Calvillo. She knew she was going to have to chase someone around the cage. She knew she was going to have to defend takedowns against someone who is knocking on the door of a title shot in the UFC already. Now she's getting a smaller opponent, someone who may not be as good of a grappler, and you think that Murphy's not going to be ready to shift gears and handle that. There may be a speed discrepancy, but if Murphy gets her hands on Liliya, I wouldn't be surprised if she TKOs her and gets her out of there. If this thing hits the floor, I also wouldn't be surprised if Murphy got her arms around her neck and choked her out, which is why I took inside the distance as opposed to the KO prop. The KO prop was just a little bit more. It was like plus 520 or something like that, so not enough of a difference for me to go ahead and chop the submission game out of there. So Murphy inside the distance for a small shot. This is another one. I really wanted to parlay Murphy and Kenney. That's what I've been looking at. That's what I've been looking at all morning. I want to parlay Murphy and Kenney that comes to about plus 120, but I just haven't quite been able to pull the trigger on it because of what I said with Casey Kenney. I trust Lauren Murphy here. This is a spot where I think she's a justified favorite, and I don't understand all this money coming against her in this spot, but it's also too wide of a line for me to just smash straight. If I could get her at minus 175, at minus 150 or something, this would be an absolute home run smash spot on Lauren Murphy for me, but at minus 225, at minus 250, it's a little pricey for women's MMA. We all know crazy shit happens in women's MMA. Jacob Malkoun taking on Phil Hawes. Jacob came in at 186, seemed kind of unfocused, aloof on the scales. Maybe that's just the kind of guy he is. He's only got 4 professional fights. Again, we really don't know a lot about him, but he looked fine. Phil Hawes came in at 186. This dude's an absolute physical specimen. There's not much else to say about it. Big flex. He was ready to go. Phil was much, much bigger. This is a spot where I was tempted to roll the dice and kind of throw a dart blindly on Malkoun because he's Whittaker's boy and because Phil Hawes has a bad gas tank, but can't do it. Just can't do it. Phil Hawes has everything here. I mean, he's in shape. He's ready to go. He is a UFC caliber fighter already. He's got high-level experience. His opponent is unexperienced, 4-0. I just can't pull the trigger. The line is way too wide, so I'm not betting on Phil Hawes, but I can't bring myself to take the shot on Malkoun either. Alexander Volkov taking on Walt the Big Ticket Harris. Now, this is where things really start to get interesting for me. Alexander Volkov came in at 265 pounds, the heavyweight limit. That's the heaviest he has ever weighed in his UFC career. This is a guy who's built a game on speed, a guy who's been a point fighter, stick and move, make him work, get the late TKO. That's what he has done every single time out. And instead, what we get is a guy who is thicker than we've ever seen him before, coming in and tipping the scales at the absolute limit. Now, when I say thicker, I also don't mean that he came in flabby. It doesn't look like he didn't take this camp seriously. It doesn't look like he didn't, like he came in on short notice or something like that. He was filled out. He didn't have a bunch of flab around his midsection. He just looked like his back was thicker. He looked like his arms were thicker. He looked like his chest was thicker. So I don't think that this is a mistake that he came in heavy on this fight. I think Volkov is coming in to make a statement and looking to sit down on his punches. Walt the Big Ticket Harris on the flip side of this thing, he came in at 254. Now the same as Alexander Volkov coming in at the heaviest he ever has, I think this is the lowest Walt Harris has ever come in before. He's been very well documented taking his strength and conditioning seriously for this fight. He was embarrassed in his last couple of fights, and now he comes in and he's got the power gut on him. You know what I'm talking about? You get those big power lifters that have a giant, it looks like a beer belly when they're wearing a shirt, but they take that thing off and you can see the individual abs on that stomach. That's a power gut, and Walt Harris has one of those. He looked fantastic. This is the best shape he has ever been in, and we know how dangerous he is. We know how athletic he is. And this was an intense stare down. These guys got in each other's faces, and they were both locked in. This is insane to me. So what I had on this fight was I went 2 units deep on Alexander Volkov when we got a really good line on him earlier in the week. I paid minus 167. I loaded up 3.34 units to win 2 on him. I'm going to make a couple moves here. What I've done is hedged off for 1 unit. I put 1 unit on Walt Harris at plus 155. So essentially what that does is if Walt Harris wins, I'm going to get 1.55 units back. That causes me to only lose just over 1 unit on Alexander Volkov. I still like Alexander Volkov. I still think Alexander Volkov wins this fight. I still think he's the better fighter. But because of the differences in the weigh-ins, because of the way these guys are coming in, and the fact that I feel like Volkov may be inviting a power striker match against an athletic fighter who's going to be faster and have more gas in the tank than he ever has before, I don't necessarily like that strategy. So I don't want quite as much exposure because we're going to be flipping that heavyweight coin. We've got Walt Harris on the other side of this thing that could blast him and absolutely get him out of there in the blink of an eye. So the other thing that I did is I'm betting the under 2.5. I got minus 139. And I'm going to go ahead and lay that chalk because, like I said, it looks to me like Volkov wants to use his power in this fight. We always know that Walt Harris wants to use his power. So I expect them to both come out hard, both come out looking for the finish. And whether somebody gasses and gets TKO'd, whether Volkov looks to use that extra strength and get this fight to the mat and then maybe choke out Walt Harris, there's a lot of ways that this fight can end, and I think it does end. I don't think it goes to the judges' scorecards the way these two guys are built and the way that they're looking. So I'm going to take that under 2.5. The beauty of that is if Walt Harris wins, I get the plus 155 on his money line, and then more than likely it's a knockout. I should be getting that under 2.5 unit as well. It'll essentially be just a baby little loss on the money that I laid on Volkov. Now, if Volkov wins this fight, and I think he does by knockout, again, same thing. I should get my full 2-unit win there because I'll win the unit on Volkov. I'll win the 2 units on Volkov. I'll lose the 1 unit on Harris, and then I'll also be cashing that under 2.5. So it's kind of a double hedge spot. It's a little confusing. I apologize, but I like this spot a whole lot better because I'm just not sure how this fight is going to play out anymore and who's going to be the one that walks away with the W. Robert the Reaper Whittaker taking on Jared Cannonier. We've got the co-main event here. 186 for Whittaker, 185 for Cannonier. Robert came in and looked really good. I'm not going to lie. I've been looking to fade this guy after his last couple of losses, after his last little bit of a run, but he looked fantastic on the scales today. Jared Cannonier made 185. In my opinion, statement weigh-in. This guy wants to show that he's championship caliber and championship ready. Absolutely shredded. The best body in the MMA game today. This guy is a freak of nature, coming all the way from heavyweight down to 185 and maintaining the amount of muscle that he has on him. Just unreal. Now, when they faced off, Robert Whittaker has a size advantage and another locked-in, dialed-in stare-down. Both these guys are ready to go. Rob flips that switch and is a mean person once it's time to fight, and Jared Cannonier is one of the most intense human beings I've ever seen in my life. This is going to be a great fight. I'm leaving it alone. I'm not going to get cold feet on this one. Robert Whittaker may have the championship experience. He may be, the better all-around fighter, but I believe in the heart, the will, and the power of Jared Cannonier. I'm going to leave my bet on him alone. Main event time, and once again, interesting things happening here. Khabib Nurmagomedov, the champion, came in at 155 and he looked awful. He looked absolutely terrible. He needed the towel immediately, and you know what else? I call bullshit. If you've been tuning into this show, you know in Fight Island that the guy doing the weigh-ins is extremely suspect right now. There have been a couple of times that I have felt people have missed weight and he's given them an extra little bit of a push. We're getting fights that maybe should be canceled that aren't canceled because the weigh-in guy is just knocking the scale thing over immediately. When Khabib stepped on that scale, he stripped down to his skivvies, he needed the towel, he's naked as the day he was born up there. He steps on the scale, and it's an old wrestling scale. So when you're overweight, it tips up, and you're supposed to adjust the bar to see what they actually weigh. He had it set on championship weight, 155, because for a title fight, you're not allowed the extra half-pound allowance. You're not allowed the extra 1 pound allowance. For a title fight, for a championship in the UFC, you have to make your weight. And Khabib stepped on that scale, and it tilted up. He did not move it over to adjust it. He knocked it the other way and called 155. You could see the immediate relief on the face of the champion. You could see him rub his hands over his head and point to the sky. Khabib missed weight by a good couple of pounds, and he damn well knew it, and he got bailed out today, folks. Just in the highlight, Gaethje came in at 155, and he looked fantastic. He looked great on the scales. He looked relaxed and confident. When they got to the face-off, it was respectful. Both men have faced off a couple times before. There's no bad blood here. There's no ill will here. Most of you know that I'm already on Justin Gaethje. If I wasn't already on Justin Gaethje, after seeing what I saw today, I would be betting Justin Gaethje. And I'm going to be sprinkling those 3, 4, and 5 round knockout props for Justin Gaethje because Khabib has missed weight a couple times. He's had injuries before, and the cut for him to get down to 155 is damn near impossible for him. He's getting older. He's done it time and time and time again, and he looked so sucked out. When he stepped on that scale, he had to use the arms of the men who were holding the towel for him in order to get his feet up there. I think he had a terrible weight cut. I think he is diminished. I think he is not going to have the usual type of explosive energy for a full 25-minute fight that we are used to seeing based on what I saw on the scales. I am very, very tempted right now to add an additional unit on Justin Gaethje at plus 275. I have not done it yet, but don't be surprised if I do. I think Justin Gaethje is going to win this fight. I thought Justin Gaethje was going to win this fight before the weigh-ins. And as you know, based on the weigh-in reads, which we have been really good on through all of 2020, that was one of the worst weigh-ins I have ever seen from the champion, Khabib. And I expect it to show in his performance tomorrow. Justin Gaethje already had a shot to win this fight. If Khabib is even 1% not his full self, Justin Gaethje has a very good chance of winning that fight tomorrow. That's the post-weigh-in recap show, everybody. That's my bets. That's the moves that I've made. I've hedged out a couple of spots on this card because things have gotten a little bit sketchy. But you know what? A penny saved is a penny earned. Last week, we hedged out on a spot and it ended up paying off. We saved ourselves a unit in our back pocket. So don't get too upset at hedging. It's not a bad strategy. Good luck on all your action. I wish you well. Have a nice weekend. Don't forget, the fights are first thing in the morning on Saturday. If you're here in the U.S., they are early. They are not late. So make sure you wake up. We're not doing Fireball and popcorn. We're doing eggs and bacon with the UFC tomorrow on Saturday. Let's roll.